Hi there and welcome to this quick eTool video. I'm hoping to just explain today where we're taking eTool as a product, as a software product, and how that sits in the broader industry trends of what's happening in the market. So before I get going, I just did quickly want to explain where we see where buildings have come from, where they are at the moment, and where we want them to go. So historically, I think buildings were becoming more and more unsustainable, and this was mainly due to really cheap energy. So efficiency was not a priority either in manufacturing of construction materials or actual operation of buildings themselves. And the legislation was centred on protecting customers from poor results of construction. So the structural integrity of buildings, for example, there was very little environmental regulation. Where we are at the moment, real sustainable products and practices are an incredible minority. There's a lot of greenwash which is disguising the unsustainable. By that I mean there's a lot of buildings that are being given a lot of attention as being sustainable buildings, but let's face it, if everybody in the world worked or resided in these buildings, we still wouldn't be able to actually provide that level of comfort or whatever it might be without huge damage to the environment. In fact, more damage to the environment than what the globe can handle. And affordability and sustainability at the moment are understood to be separate goals that aren't attainable together. The future, and we're moving here pretty quickly, so greenwash will be reduced. People understand what real sustainability is, and that's about actually ensuring that the footprint that we personally leave on the planet can actually handle it, and we start to work towards leaving the planet in a better place than we found it. Low cost benefits of low carbon buildings are widely recognised. As energy prices get more expensive and we start internalising environmental damage as a cost, then we will see a much bigger economic argument for sustainable buildings. And sustainable behaviour will become the social norm. It will be frowned upon if you don't build sustainably. The long-term sustainable vision would be positive environmental impacts, health and happiness for the building occupants, and the buildings enable life to be fun and fulfilling. So let's just have a look at the construction industry market trends. So what's actually happening in the construction industry? And I think the biggest driver of trends in this industry, without going into the detail, is really carbon emissions at the moment. So this is a map of carbon emissions per capita, and we're currently sitting at around about 5 or 6 tonnes per person, and where we need to be, if we agree that the population is probably going to stabilise at about 9 billion, probably need to be under 1 tonne per person. So there's definitely some challenges, and I think what we need to achieve that is actually a paradigm shift. It's not a matter of incremental small adjustments, or it will be incremental small adjustments, but the end result will be a pretty huge reduction in decarbonisation of the economy. I think that's where the focus is at the moment with regards to legislation and also the voluntary market for sustainable buildings. And how is the construction software industry actually responding to this? There's 4 main leaps that we see that are going to happen in construction software. The first thing that we see as a really important step is that life cycle assessment will become commonly recognised as the definitive method for determining relative environmental merits of building designs. So there will be a recognition at some point that measuring the performance of the building is far better than any check sheet to say that you must do A, B and C in order to achieve a certain score in a rating system or whatever it might be, or achieve compliance with a certain regulation. And when you think about how to actually measure the sustainability of a building, you can't break it down into its elements, and you can't just look at one part of the life cycle of the building. You do have to take a life cycle assessment approach to really get a true understanding of the sustainability of buildings. So we've got real faith that LCA will be commonly recognised as the definitive method. And indeed, that's actually happening. Most progressive organisations that are in this field know that LCA will become the definitive method, and they're working towards that goal. And I guess when that becomes more of a widespread accepted truth, then we'll be moving very quickly to improve our LCA methodology within the software. So at the moment, eTool, although it's a really sophisticated streamlined LCA package, there are some deficiencies. We'd like to introduce a lot more transparency into the eTool algorithms and data sources. We'd also like to introduce ways of actually measuring overall damage and better multi-indicator reporting. Ideally, we'd like to establish an agreement with a major lifecycle inventory data provider and enable uploading of custom lifecycle inventory sources from existing LCA packages. The next thing that we see is a really big, I guess, software industry trend would be, and this is probably more in the future, but it will happen, is a convergence of lifecycle assessment and lifecycle cost assessment tools. Now, eTool already covers this in a broad sense, but once we see some others in the market move in this direction, then there's a few updates that we want to do around accuracy of lifecycle cost assessments. So we'll introduce customised electricity grids, materials and assembly items, and we'll enable costs to be associated to those custom items. So we'll also enable adjustment of costs for whole designs or templates and individual design components, so you can make overall adjustments that will adjust every single item. We'll also introduce calculation of inflation factors and some advanced quantity surveying reporting. So it may even be that eTool ends up being a bit of a pseudo quantity surveying package. Product, I guess the next big industry trend, and we're seeing some real movement in the EPD area at the moment in Europe, it's environmental product declarations. We'd like to be able to upload those automatically into eTool, or at least provide for people to upload them. And there's a bit of a crossover with the functionality that we want to introduce here. So we might find that this trend happens before, say, the lifecycle costing merging with LCA. So if that's the case, we would move the customised materials forward and ensure that we can easily upload and share custom materials. And we'd advance materials and template searching so that there's a better ability for the users to compare different materials in the software on the fly. And also component by component LCA calculations on the screen. So as you're adjusting your material in a component in eTool, a single line item, you can see a little pie chart of what the big ticket items are and what the overall impact is. The next industry trend, and we see this as a bit of a holy grail in sustainable design, will be the integration of lifecycle assessment and thermal performance in the one tool, and preferably a 3D design tool. So before that happens, we really want to make sure that, well, we'd like to be one of the first software packages to be involved in that integration. So we'd like to integrate with 3D CAD packages and also be an online library of environmental and building performance information for products and templates, etc. Storage of templates in readable format for external tools. So we'd actually store the 3D data files so you could upload them straight into 3D models. and uploading a 3D design files into eTool. Potentially we might use GBXML for this, but we're not sold on any technology at the moment or any format. And we'd like to return LCA results back into the 3D package so that you can actually inform your design as you're actually drawing it, which would be ideal. And then I guess it'll be interesting to see when this kicks in. If there is some legislation introduced somewhere around the world regarding the life cycle assessment of buildings, and this could happen pretty quickly. So life cycle assessment tools will really have to up their workflow capabilities to handle bulk assessments. And if that happens, then eTool has a plan to introduce or update our workflow to match any partnership agreements that we have, and detailed workflow reporting, so we could report KPIs for our clients, KPIs for assessors, KPIs for certifiers, things like total CO2 saved or total financial benefit of recommendations that have been put forward to designs, etc. And we'll also be conducting some pretty rigorous testing of eTool for high volume use. So we probably see this as more down the track with some of these other updates, but it's something to bear in mind. We're looking at how we'll implement that. So that pretty much summarises the eTool product releases that we see on the horizon. There's a lot of other small updates that are just, I guess, tiny little components and bug fixes that fit before these major releases and also during them. But they're the main themes that we're talking about with our updates. And it falls into this broader picture of where we see the industry is, and that's a pretty fluid, I guess, it's a pretty fluid space at the moment, so we are keeping a pretty open mind about how we approach it. Thanks for listening, and I hope that clarifies where we see things headed. Thanks.